Anne's voice fades out. Scene 4. It is the middle of the night, several months later. The stage is dark except for a little light which comes through the skylight in Peter's room. Everyone is in bed. Mr. and Mrs. Frank lie on the couch in the main room, which has been pulled out to serve as a makeshift double bed. Margot is sleeping on a mattress on the floor in the main room, behind a curtain stretched across for privacy. The others are all in their accustomed rooms. From outside we hear two drunken soldiers singing Lily Marlene. A girl's high giggle is heard. The sound of running feet is heard coming closer and then fading in the distance. Throughout the scene there is the distant sound of airplanes passing overhead. A match suddenly flares up in the attic. We dimly see Mr. Von Don. He is getting his bearings. He comes quickly down the stairs and goes to the cupboard where the food is stored. Again the match flares up and is as quickly blown out. The dim figure is seen to steal back up the stairs. There is quiet for a second or two, broken only by the sound of airplanes and running feet on the street below. Suddenly, out of the silence and the dark, we hear Anne scream. "No, no, don't take me!" she moans, tossing and crying in her sleep. The other people wake, terrified. Dussel sits up in bed, furious. "Shush, Anne! Anne, for God's sake, shush!" "Save me! Save me!" She screams and screams. Dussel gets out of bed, going over to her, trying to wake her. "For God's sake! Quiet! Quiet! You want someone to hear?" In the main room, Mrs. Frank grabs a shawl and pulls it around her. She rushes into Anne, taking her in her arms. Mr. Frank hurriedly gets up, putting on his overcoat. Margot sits up, terrified. Peter's light goes on in his room. "Hush, darling, hush! It's all right, it's all right." "Will you be kind enough to turn on the light, Mr. Dussel?" "It's nothing, my darling. It was just a dream." Dussel turns on the light in the bedroom. Mrs. Frank holds Anne in her arms. Gradually Anne comes out of her nightmare, still trembling with horror. Mr. Frank comes into the room and goes quickly to the window, looking out to be sure that no one outside has heard Anne's screams. Mrs. Frank holds Anne, talking softly to her. In the main room, Margot stands on a chair, turning on the center hanging lamp. A light goes on in the Von Don's room overhead. Peter puts his robe on, coming out of his room. "Something must be done about that child, Mrs. Frank, yelling like that. Who knows but there's somebody on the streets? She's endangering all our lives." "Anne, darling." "Every night she twists and turns. I don't sleep. I spend half my night shushing her, and now it's nightmares." Margot comes to the door of Anne's room, followed by Peter. Mr. Frank goes to them, indicating that everything is all right. Peter takes Margot back. "You're here, safe, you see? Nothing has happened. Please, Mr. Dussel, go back to bed. She'll be herself in a minute or two. Won't you, Anne?" "Thank you, but I'm going to the W.C., the one place where there's peace." He stalks out. Mr. Von Don, in underwear and trousers, comes down the stairs. "What is it? What happened?" "A nightmare. She was having a nightmare. I thought someone was murdering her. Unfortunately, no." He goes into the bathroom. Mr. Von Don goes back up the stairs. Mr. Frank, in the main room, sends Peter back to his own bedroom. "Thank you, Peter. Go back to bed." Peter goes back to his room. Mr. Frank follows him, turning out the light and looking out the window. Then he goes back to the main room and gets up on a chair, turning out the center hanging lamp. "Would you like some water?" Anne shakes her head. "Was it a very bad dream? Perhaps if you told me, I'd rather not talk about it." "Poor darling. Try to sleep then. I'll sit right here beside you until you fall asleep." She brings a stool over, sitting there. "You don't have to. But I'd like to stay with you, very much, really. I'd rather you didn't." "Good night, then." She leans down to kiss Anne. Anne throws her arm up over her face, turning away. Mrs. Frank, hiding her hurt, kisses Anne's arm. "You'll be all right? There's nothing that you want? Will you please ask Father to come?" After a second. "Of course, Anne dear." She hurries out into the other room. Mr. Frank comes to her as she comes in. "Sie verlangt nach dir." Sense in her hurt. "Edith, Liebe, schau." "Es macht nix. Ich danke dem lieben Herrgott, dass sie sich wenigstens an dich wendet, wenn sie Trost braucht. Geh hinein, Otto. Sie ist ganz hysterisch vor Angst." As Mr. Frank hesitates. "Geht zu ihr." He looks at her for a second and then goes to get a cup of water for Anne. Mrs. Frank sinks down on the bed, her face in her hands, trying to keep from sobbing aloud. Margot comes over to her, putting her arms around her. "She wants nothing of me. She pulled away when I leaned down to kiss her." "It's a phase. You heard Father. Most girls go through it. They turn to their fathers at this age. They give all their love to their fathers. You weren't like this. You didn't shut me out." She'll get over it. She smooths the bed for Mrs. Frank and sits beside her a moment as Mrs. Frank lies down. In Anne's room, Mr. Frank comes in, sitting down by Anne. Anne flings her arm around him, clinging to him. In the distance we hear the sound of ack, ack. "Oh, Pym, I dreamed that they came to get us. The Green Police. They broke down the door and grabbed me and started to drag me out the way they did Yobi." "I want you to take this pill." "What is it?" "Something to quiet you." She takes it and drinks the water. In the main room, Margot turns out the light and goes back to her bed. "Do you want me to read to you for a while?" "No, just sit with me for a minute. Was I awful? Did I yell terribly loud? Do you think anyone outside could have heard?" "No, no. Lie quietly now. Try to sleep." "I'm a terrible coward. I'm so disappointed in myself. I think I've conquered my fear. I think I'm really grown up, and then something happens, and I run to you like a baby. I love you, Father. I don't love anyone but you." "Annalay!" "It's true. I've been thinking about it for a long time. You're the only one I love." "It's fine to hear you tell me that you love me, but I'd be happier if you said you loved your mother as well. She needs your help so much. Your love. We have nothing in common. She doesn't understand me. Whenever I try to explain my views on life to her, she asks me if I'm constipated." "You hurt her very much just now. She's crying. She's in there crying." "I can't help it. I only told the truth. I didn't want her here." "Oh, Pym, I was horrible, wasn't I? And the worst of it is, I can stand off and look at myself doing it and know it's cruel, and yet I can't stop doing it. What's the matter with me? Tell me. Don't say it's just a phase. Help me." "There is so little that we parents can do to help our children. We can only try to set a good example, point the way. The rest you must do yourself. You must build your own character." "I'm trying. Really I am. Every night I think back over all the things I did that day that were wrong, like putting the wet mop in Mr. Dussel's bed, and this thing now with Mother. I say to myself, that was wrong. I make up my mind. I'm never going to do that again. Never. Of course I may do something worse, but at least I'll never do that again. I have a nicer side, Father, a sweeter, nicer side, but I'm scared to show it. I'm afraid that people are going to laugh at me if I'm serious. So the mean Anne comes to the outside and the good Anne stays on the inside, and I keep on trying to switch them around and have the good Anne outside and the bad Anne inside and be what I'd like to be and might be, if only. She is asleep. Mr. Frank watches her for a moment and then turns off the light and starts out. The lights dim out. The curtain falls on the scene. Anne's voice is heard dimly at first, and then with growing strength. "The air raids are getting worse. They come over day and night. The noise is terrifying. Pym says it should be music to our ears. The more planes, the sooner will come the end of the war. Mrs. Von Don pretends to be a fatalist. What will be, will be. But when the planes come over, who's the most frightened? No one else but Petronella. Monday, the 9th of November, 1942. Wonderful news! The Allies have landed in Africa. Pym says that we can look for an early finish to the war. Just for fun, he asked each of us what was the first thing we wanted to do when we got out of here. Mrs. Von Don longs to be home with her own things, her needlepoint chairs, the Bechstein piano her father gave her, the best that money could buy. Peter would like to go to a movie. Mr. Dussel wants to get back to his dentist drill. He's afraid he is losing his touch. For myself, there are so many things. To ride a bike again, to laugh till my belly aches, to have new clothes from the skin out, to have a hot tub filled to overflowing and wallow in it for hours, to be back in school with my friends." As the last lines are being said, the curtain rises on the scene. The lights dim on as Anne's voice fades away. Scene 5. It is the first night of the Hanukkah celebration. Mr. Frank is standing at the head of the table on which is the menorah. He lights the shamos, or servant candle, and holds it as he says the blessing. Seated listening is all of the family, dressed in their best. The men wear hats. Peter wears his cap. Reading from a prayer book. Praise be thou, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who hast sanctified us with thy commandments, and bidden us kindle the Hanukkah lights. Praise be thou, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has wrought wondrous deliverances for our fathers in days of old. Praise be thou, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, that thou hast given us life and sustenance and brought us to this happy season. Mr. Frank lights the one candle of the menorah as he continues. We kindle this Hanukkah light to celebrate the great and wonderful deeds wrought through the zeal with which God filled the hearts of the heroic Maccabees 2,000 years ago. They fought against indifference, against tyranny and oppression, and they restored our temple to us. May these lights remind us that we should ever look to God, whence cometh our help. Amen. Amen. Mr. Frank hands Mrs. Frank the prayer book. Reading. I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. He that keepeth Israel doth neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall keep thee from all evil. He shall keep thy soul. The Lord shall guard thy going out and thy coming in, from this time forth and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Mrs. Frank puts down the prayer book and goes to get the food and wine. Margot helps her. Mr. Frank takes the men's hats and puts them aside. That was very moving. It isn't over yet. Sit down, sit down. There's a lot more. Songs and presents. Presents? Not this year, unfortunately. But always on Hanukkah, everyone gives presents. Everyone. Like our St. Nicholas Day. There's a chorus of no's from the group. No, not like St. Nicholas. What kind of a Jew are you that you don't know Hanukkah? I remember particularly the candles. First one, as we have tonight. Then the second night, you light 2 candles. The next night, 3, and so on until you have 8 candles burning. When there are 8 candles, it is truly beautiful. And the potato pancakes. Don't talk about them. I make the best latkes you ever tasted. Invite us all next year, in your own home. God willing. God willing. What I remember best is the presents we used to get when we were little. 8 days of presents, and each day they got better and better. We are all here alive. That is present enough. No, it isn't. I've got something. She rushes into her room, hurriedly puts on a little hat improvised from the lampshade, grabs a satchel bulging with parcels, and comes running back. What is it? Presents! Presents? Look! What's she got on her head? A lampshade. She picks out one at random. This is for Margot. She hands it to Margot, pulling her to her feet. Read it out loud. Reading. You have never lost your temper. You never will, I fear. You are so good, but if you should, put all your crosswords here. She tears open the package. A new crossword puzzle book. Where did you get it? It isn't new. It's one that you've done, but I rubbed it all out, and if you wait a little and forget, you can do it all over again. It's wonderful, Anne. Thank you. You'd never know it wasn't new. From outside we hear the sound of a streetcar passing. With another gift. Mrs. Von Don. Taking it. This is awful. I haven't anything for anyone. I never thought. This is all Anne's idea. Holding up a bottle. What is it? It's hair shampoo. I took all the odds and ends of soap and mixed them with the last of my toilet water. Oh, Anneke! I wanted to write a poem for all of them, but I didn't have time. Offering a large box to Mr. Von Don. Yours. Mr. Von Don, it's really something. Something you want more than anything. As she waits for him to open it. Look, cigarettes! Cigarettes? 2 of them! Pim found some old pipe tobacco in the pocket lining of his coat, and we made them. Or rather, Pim did. Let me see. Well, look at that. Light it, Putty. Light it. Mr. Von Don hesitates. It's tobacco, really it is. There's a little fluff in it, but not much. Everyone watches intently as Mr. Von Don cautiously lights it. The cigarette flares up. Everyone laughs. It works! Look at him. Thank you, Anne. Thank you. Anne rushes back to her satchel for another present, handing her mother a piece of paper. For Mother, Hanukkah greeting. She pulls her mother to her feet. Here is an IOU that I promise to pay. 10 hours of doing whatever you say. Signed, Anne Frank. Mrs. Frank, touched, takes Anne in her arms, holding her close. 10 hours of doing what you're told? Anything you're told? That's right. You wouldn't want to sell that, Mrs. Frank? Never. This is the most precious gift I've ever had. She sits, showing her present to the others. Anne hurries back to the satchel and pulls out a scarf, the scarf that Mr. Frank found in the first scene, offering it to her father. For Pim. Anneke, I wasn't supposed to have a present. He takes it, unfolding it, and showing it to the others. It's a muffler to put round your neck, like an ascot, you know. I made it myself out of odds and ends. I knit it in the dark each night after I'd gone to bed. I'm afraid it looks better in the dark. Putting it on. It's fine. It fits me perfectly. Thank you, Annalay. Anne hands Peter a ball of paper with a string attached to it. That's for Moushy. Rising to bow. On behalf of Moushy, I thank you. Hesitant, handing him a gift. And this is yours, from Mrs. Quack Quack, as he holds it gingerly in his hands. Well, open it. Aren't you going to open it? I'm scared to. I know something is going to jump out and hit me. No, it's nothing like that, really, as he's opening it. What is it, Peter? Go on, show it. It's a safety razor. A what? A razor. You didn't make that out of odds and ends. Meep got it for me. It's not new. It's secondhand, but you really do need a razor now. For what? Look at his upper lip. You can see the beginning of a mustache. He wants to get rid of that? Put a little milk on it and let the cat lick it off. Think you're funny, don't you? Look, he can't wait. He's going in to try it. I'm going to give Moushy his present. He goes into his room, slamming the door behind him. Moushy, Moushy, Moushy. In the distance we hear a dog persistently barking. Anne brings a gift to Dussel. And last but never least, my roommate, Mr. Dussel. For me? You have something for me? He opens the small box she gives him. I made them myself. Puzzled. Capsules? 2 capsules? They're earplugs. Earplugs? To put in your ears so you won't hear me when I thrash around at night. I saw them advertised in a magazine. They're not real ones. I made them out of cotton and candle wax. Try them. See if they don't work. See if you can hear me talk. Putting them in his ears. Wait now until I get them in. So, are you ready? Huh? Are you ready? Good God! They've gone inside! I can't get them out! They laugh as Mr. Dussel jumps about, trying to shake the plugs out of his ears. Finally, he gets them out, putting them away. Thank you, Anne. Thank you. A real Hanukkah. Wasn't it cute of her? I don't know when she did it. I love my present. Sitting at the table. And now let's have the song. Father, please, to Dussel. Have you heard the Hanukkah song, Mr. Dussel? The song is the whole thing. Oh, Hanukkah, the sweet celebration. I'm afraid, Anne, we shouldn't sing that song tonight. It's a song of jubilation, of rejoicing. One is apt to become too enthusiastic. Oh, please, please, let's sing the song. I promise not to shout. Very well, but quietly now. I'll keep an eye on you, and when... As Anne starts to sing, she is interrupted by Dussel, who is snorting and wheezing. You! Peter's coming from his bedroom, ostentatiously holding a bulge in his coat as if he were holding his cat, and dangling Anne's present before it. How many times? I told you! Out! Out! What's the matter with you? Haven't you any sense? Get that cat out of here. Cat? You heard me. Get it out of here. I have no cat. Delighted with his joke, he opens his coat and pulls out a bath towel. The group at the table laugh, enjoying the joke. It doesn't need to be the cat. His clothes are enough. When he comes out of that room... Don't worry. You won't be bothered anymore. We're getting rid of it. At last you listen to me. He goes off into his bedroom. I'm not doing it for you. That's all in your mind. All of it. He starts back to his place at the table. I'm doing it because I'm sick of seeing that cat eat all our food. That's not true. I only give him bones, scraps. Don't tell me. He gets fatter every day. Damn cat looks better than any of us. Out he goes tonight. No! Mr. Van Daan, you can't do that. That's Peter's cat. Peter loves that cat. Anne. If he goes, I go. Go! Go! You're not going, and the cat's not going. Now please, this is Hanukkah. Hanukkah! This is the time to celebrate. What's the matter with all of you? Come on, Anne, let's have the song. Oh, Hanukkah, the sweet celebration. I think we should first blow out the candle. Then we'll have something for tomorrow night. But, Father, you're supposed to let it burn itself out. I'm sure that God understands shortages, before blowing it out. Praise be thou, O Lord our God, who hast sustained us and permitted us to celebrate this joyous festival. He is about to blow out the candle when suddenly there is a crash of something falling below. They all freeze in horror, motionless. For a few seconds there is complete silence. Mr. Frank slips off his shoes. The others noiselessly follow his example. Mr. Frank turns out a light near him. He motions to Peter to turn off the center lamp. Peter tries to reach it, realizes he cannot, and gets up on a chair. Just as he is touching the lamp, he loses his balance. The chair goes out from under him. He falls. The iron lampshade crashes to the floor. There's a sound of feet below, running down the stairs. God almighty! The only light left comes from the Hanukkah candle. Dussel comes from his room. Mr. Frank creeps over to the stairwell and stands listening. The dog is heard barking excitedly. Do you hear anything? In a whisper. No, I think they've gone. It's the Green Police! They found us! If they had, they wouldn't have left. They'd be up here by now. I know it's the Green Police. They've gone to get help, that's all. They'll be back. Or it may have been the Gestapo, looking for papers. Or a thief, looking for money. We've got to do something. Quick, quick, before they come back. There isn't anything to do. Just wait. Mr. Frank holds up his hand for them to be quiet. He is listening intently. There is complete silence as they all strain to hear any sound from below. Suddenly, Anne begins to sway. With a low cry, she falls to the floor in a faint. Mrs. Frank goes to her quickly, sitting beside her on the floor and taking her in her arms. Get some water, please. Get some water. Margot starts for the sink. No, no, no one's going to run water. If they found us, they found us. Get the water. Margot starts again for the sink, Mr. Frank getting a flashlight. I'm going down. Margot rushes to him, clinging to him. Anne struggles to consciousness. No, Father, no. There may be someone there, waiting. It may be a trap. This is Saturday. There's no way for us to know what has happened until Miep or Mr. Kraler comes on Monday morning. We cannot live with this uncertainty. Don't go, Father. Hush, darling, hush. Mr. Frank slips quietly out, down the steps and out through the door below. Margot, stay close to me. Margot goes to her mother. Shush, shush. Mrs. Frank whispers to Margot to get the water. Margot goes for it. Putty, where's our money? Get our money. I hear you can buy the Green Police off so much ahead. Go upstairs, quick, get the money. Keep still. Do you want to be dragged off to a concentration camp? Are you going to just stand there and wait for them to come up and get you? Do something, I tell you. Will you keep still? He goes over to the stairwell to listen. Peter goes to his mother, helping her up onto the sofa. There is a second of silence. Then Anne can stand it no longer. Someone go after Father! Make Father come back! I'll go. Haven't you done enough? He pushes Peter roughly away. In his anger against his father, Peter grabs a chair as if to hit him with it, then puts it down, burying his face in his hands. Mrs. Frank begins to pray softly. Please, please, Mr. Van Don, get Father! Quiet! Quiet! Anne is shocked into silence. Mrs. Frank pulls her closer, holding her protectively in her arms. I lift mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. She stops as she hears someone coming. They all watch the door tensely. Mr. Frank comes quietly in. Anne rushes to him, holding him tight. It was a thief. That noise must have scared him away. Thank God. He took the cash box and the radio. He ran away in such a hurry that he didn't stop to shut the street door. It was swinging wide open. A breath of relief sweeps over them. I think it would be good to have some light. Are you sure it's all right? The danger has passed. Margot goes to light the small lamp. Don't be so terrified, Anne. We're safe. Who says the danger is past? Don't you realize we are in greater danger than ever? Mr. Dussel, will you be still? Mr. Frank takes Anne back to the table, making her sit down with him, trying to calm her. Pointing to Peter. Thanks to this clumsy fool, there's someone now who knows we're up here. Someone now knows we're up here hiding. Going to Dussel. Someone knows we're here, yes. But who is the someone? A thief! A thief! You think a thief is going to go to the Green Police and say, I was robbing a place the other night and I heard a noise up over my head. You think a thief is going to do that? Yes, I think he will. You're crazy! She stumbles back to her seat at the table. Peter follows protectively, pushing Dussel aside. I think someday he'll be caught and then he'll make a bargain with the Green Police, if they'll let him off. He'll tell them where some Jews are hiding. He goes off into the bedroom. There's a second of appalled silence. He's right. Father, let's get out of here. We can't stay here now. Let's go. Go? Where? Yes, where? Have we lost all faith? All courage? A moment ago we thought that they'd come for us. We were sure it was the end, but it wasn't the end. We're alive, safe. Mr. Van Don goes to the table and sits. Mr. Frank prays. We thank thee, O Lord our God, that in thy infinite mercy thou hast again seen fit to spare us. He blows out the candle, then turns to Anne. Come, Anne, the song. Let's have the song. He starts to sing. Anne finally starts falteringly to sing as Mr. Frank urges her on. Her voice is hardly audible at first. Oh Hanukkah, the sweet celebration. As she goes on singing, the others gradually join in. Their voice is still shaking with fear. Mrs. Von Don sobs as she sings. Around the feast we gather in complete jubilation. Happiest of sons now is here. Many are the reasons for good cheer. Dussel comes from the bedroom. He comes over to the table, standing beside Margot, listening to them as they sing. Together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. As they sing on with growing courage, the lights start to dim. So hear us rejoicing and merrily voicing the Hanukkah song that we sing. Hoy! The lights are out. The curtain starts slowly to fall. Hear us rejoicing and merrily voicing the Hanukkah song that we sing. They're still singing as the curtain falls. Starting for Peter's door. It's Miep! She knocks at the door. Father! Mr. Frank comes quickly